In the quiet village of Umuaka, Amarachi balanced a clay pot on her head as she walked barefoot through dusty paths. Her back ached from years of labor, but her eyes carried more burden than her arms ever could. She was 22, with dreams too expensive for the soil she stood on. Her admission letter to Enugu State University lay inside a rusted metal box at home untouched, because the fees were untouched too. Her mother, Mama Grace, sold roasted corn, while her father lay weak from a stroke that took his speech and strength 2 years ago. Poverty was not new. It was part of the air they breathed. Every morning before sunrise, Amarachi whispered to God at the stream, "If you will just remember me, even once." But heaven remained silent. As her siblings got thinner and their debts thicker, the dream of becoming a nurse seemed foolish. Yet she held on, that is, until the day her mother rushed into their hut, face glowing with unusual excitement, and said words Amarachi never thought she'd hear. "My daughter, someone wants to marry you, and he has already paid the bride price." Amarachi blinked, mouth wide open. "Marry who?" she asked, voice trembling. Mama Grace dropped the plastic basin in her hands and leaned close. "His name is Inanna, the carpenter's son. You know him. He lives at the edge of the village, alone." Amarachi's shock turned to anger. "The man that never talks to anyone? The one that walks around like a ghost? Mama, are you joking?" But Mama Grace wasn't smiling. She opened her purse and pulled out a bundle of crisp N1,000 notes. "He paid N2 million in cash and said he'll handle your father's hospital treatment too." Amarachi's breath caught. That money could feed them for a year, pay the hospital bills, and maybe even fund her education. But still, Nana? Why would a man who lived like a beggar have N2 million lying around? Something didn't sit right. Her mother placed a shaky hand on her shoulder. "My child, this is God's answer. Don't let pride block your blessing." Amarachi looked around their hut, the leaking zinc roof, her father's wheezing body, her little brother coughing in the corner. She closed her eyes and swallowed her tears. "When is the wedding?" The wedding happened in less than a week. No time for preparation, no white dress, no friends. Just a faded yellow Ankara dress that Mama Grace ironed over a lantern and a pair of borrowed slippers from a neighbor. The church was nearly empty, save for the priest, a few curious villagers, and a heavily sweating Nana standing at the altar in an oversized shirt and old leather shoes. He didn't smile. He didn't speak more than necessary. When asked to say, "I do," he simply nodded. Amarachi's heart was pounding, not from excitement, but confusion, as the priest declared them husband and wife. She looked at Nana's eyes, dark, distant, unreadable. No ring, no music, no joy. Just silence, like a transaction had been completed. After the ceremony, Nana led her to his house, a crumbling red mud building with a wooden door barely hanging on its hinges. Inside was one small bed, a kerosene stove, and a window that wouldn't close. Amarachi sat on the bed, dazed. She had just become a wife, and yet she had never felt more alone. Days passed. Nana barely spoke. He left before sunrise and returned after dark. When Amarachi asked where he went, he simply said, "I work," but she never saw him working in the village, not at the carpenter's shed, not at the market. He came back with groceries, sometimes with meat or imported rice, things they couldn't afford. Yet his house had no generator, no fan, no fridge. Everything was strange. When she offered to cook, he'd nod. When she brought him food, he'd say, "Thank you," but never anything more. Amarachi was losing her mind. She cleaned the house top to bottom, looked through old cupboards, searched for any clue to who Nana really was. But there was nothing. The villagers avoided her, some out of pity, others out of envy. Rumors spread like wildfire. She married for money. He's an occultist. She cursed. At night, she stared at the ceiling, wondering if she had sold her soul in Ankara. The man sleeping beside her might have been her husband by law, but in truth, he was a complete stranger. One humid evening, the rain poured heavily, and Nana was running late. Amarachi, tired and restless, began sweeping under the furniture when her broom hit something hard behind the cupboard. Curious, she reached in and dragged it out a black leather briefcase, surprisingly heavy. She hesitated. Something about it felt forbidden. But temptation won. She unlatched it carefully. Inside was a neat stack of N1000 notes, bundles of them. Beneath the cash was a sleek Samsung phone, newer than anything she'd seen in Umuaka. Her fingers shook as she held it. No fingerprint lock, just a passcode. She typed in her birthday 0412. The phone opened. Amarachi's heart nearly stopped. Photo albums, bank apps, videos. The gallery was filled with images of Nana in designer suits, boarding private jets, giving speeches at tech conferences. One photo showed him with Dangote, another with foreign investors. Bank alerts from Zenith and HSBC popped up with balances in millions and billions. Amarachi staggered back, chest pounding. The quiet man in rags she had married wasn't poor. He was a billionaire in disguise. Amarachi's hands trembled as she stared at the unlocked phone. The images haunted her. Nana standing on the steps of a private jet. Nana receiving an award in Abuja from a senator. Nana in London, posing in front of a tech exhibition banner that read, ND Holdings, Africa's next unicorn. Every frame clashed with the man who had been fixing wooden chairs in a mudroom. She clicked into the banking app and gasped multiple accounts in his name, foreign and local, with balances she couldn't pronounce. She dropped the phone like it had burned her fingers. For a moment she couldn't breathe. The room felt smaller, heavier. Who had she married? Why was he living like a ghost in a broken village house when he could afford palaces? Amarachi sat on the floor, pressing her hands to her head. Had she been chosen or trapped? Her mind raced with questions, but deep down, one thing was clear: her life was no longer what she thought it was. Nana returned just as the rain stopped, soaked and carrying a nylon bag of plantains. Amarachi stood in the middle of the room, shaking. "Who are you?" she asked, eyes wide with disbelief. He paused, stared at her, then slowly set the bag down. "You went through my things," he said quietly. "I had to," she snapped. "You lied to me. You let me believe you were broke, struggling when you're swimming in billions." Nana let out a long sigh and sat on the edge of the bed. "I didn't lie. I just didn't say anything." Amarachi couldn't believe her ears. "That's not honesty, that's manipulation." He looked at her then, for the first time like someone who had something to lose. "I needed someone who would see me without the money, without the power. I've been betrayed before by women, friends, even family. I came here to disappear. And I wanted a wife who loved me at my lowest." That night, Amarachi couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the briefcase, the jet, the numbers on the bank screen. She felt like a character in someone else's movie, the poor girl duped into marrying a ghost billionaire. By morning, she was done. She packed a nylon bag with her clothes, tied her scarf, and marched back to her mother's house. Mama Grace was shocked to see her. "What happened?" she asked. Amarachi's lips quivered. "He's not poor, Mama. He's a billionaire. And he lied to me." Her mother looked confused. "So, he has money?" "Yes," Amarachi replied, "but he used me to test if I was good enough. Like I'm some village lab rat." Mama Grace sat slowly. "And you left all that money behind?" Amarachi's silence was answer enough. The villagers gathered quickly, their whispers turning to loud gossip. "She left a billionaire? She must be mad. What kind of woman leaves a man with jets?" But Amarachi didn't care. Her heart was bruised. She would rather be broke than feel like a puppet. The village woke up to an even bigger surprise than Amarachi's return. Someone no one knew who had leaked photos from her wedding, her faded Ankara dress, her borrowed slippers, her face filled with quiet confusion. But what sent the internet into a frenzy were the images that followed. Nana in a Rolls Royce, Nana at Davos, Nana at a tech gala in Dubai. The headline blazed across social media. "Billionaire marries unknown village girl in secret traditional wedding." Twitter exploded. TikTok creators reenacted her walk down the dusty church aisle. Blogs titled her the Ankara billionaire wife. Some pitied her, others mocked her. Most were just obsessed. How did she not know? This is some Netflix script. Is this a ritual marriage? Meanwhile, Amarachi stayed inside her mother's hut, switching off her phone, trembling with shame. People she hadn't spoken to in years began texting her. Her old classmates sent voice notes. "Amara, I beg, send me in 50K. You a billionaire wife now." But Amarachi was crumbling inside. The chaos wasn't over. One hot afternoon, a shiny black G-Wagon pulled into the village. It kicked up dust as it parked in front of Mama Grace's house. From it stepped a tall, light-skinned woman in designer shades, high heels, and a loud red wig. Her lipstick was perfect. Her anger was louder. She didn't wait for greetings. "Which one of you is Amarachi?" she snapped. Amarachi came out slowly. "I'm the one." The woman pulled off her glasses. "I'm Mimi, the woman your husband left in Lagos, his real fiancée, the one he was supposed to marry before he faked his own death." Gasps came from the neighbors. Mama Grace nearly dropped a bowl of beans. Mimi stepped forward. "Do you think this marriage will last? He's coming back to Lagos, and when he does, you'll go back to hawking sachet water. Enjoy your spotlight while it lasts, sweetheart." She turned, climbed into her car, and sped off, leaving a cloud of dust and a trail of emotional destruction. Amarachi stood frozen. Her worst fear had just been confirmed. She had married into a war she didn't understand. After Mimi's dramatic visit, Amarachi's world spiraled even further. At first, it was whispers from villagers, people asking if she really stole another woman's man. Then it got darker. One night, her little brother fell violently ill. They rushed him to a nearby clinic, only to discover that someone had replaced his malaria pills with ordinary chalk. 2 days later, someone slashed her father's oxygen tube while no one was home. The doctor said if they hadn't come in time, he would have died. Then came the message. A plain white envelope under their front door. Inside it, a single piece of paper. "Leave him or bury your family." Amarachi collapsed when she read it. Mama Grace screamed and locked all the doors. By the next morning, they had packed a few clothes and escaped to Enugu to stay with a distant cousin. Amarachi deleted all her social media accounts and blocked every unknown number. She was done. This was no longer about heartbreak, it was now survival. Enugu felt like both a hiding place and a cage. Amarachi lived in a single room with her family, barely big enough to turn around. She couldn't sleep at night. Her mother kept watch by the window, armed with a stick and bottle of pepper spray. Even though they were far from Umuaka, the fear followed them like a shadow. Amarachi refused to talk about Nana, even when Mama Grace begged her to reach out. Every time her phone buzzed, her chest tightened. What if it was another threat? What if they had tracked her down? The fear ate her alive. She hadn't heard from Nana since she left, and part of her was glad. He had dragged her into the storm, and now she was drowning alone. The village girl who once dreamed of becoming a nurse was now a fugitive wife of a man she never truly knew. Then, one rainy night, someone knocked on the door. The knock came again, louder this time. Mama Grace grabbed a broomstick. Amarachi's heart raced. She tiptoed to the door and peeked through a crack. What she saw froze her blood. Nana, soaked in rain, kneeling at the doorstep, his white shirt clinging to his body. His beard untrimmed, his eyes tired, broken, pleading. Amarachi flung the door open. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. "You shouldn't have come." But he didn't move. He stayed on his knees. "I'm sorry, Amara. I should have told you the truth, about everything. I never meant for this to happen." Mama Grace rushed out and slapped him across the face. "You think this is a game?" she shouted. Nana bowed his head. "I didn't come to defend myself. I came to beg, not just for forgiveness, but for protection. For her. Because now she's a target too." His voice cracked. "They're after both of us." That night, Nana told them the full story, and it was more shocking than Amarachi ever imagined. 2 years ago, Nana had uncovered massive fraud within his tech company, senior partners stealing funds, laundering money through offshore accounts. When he tried to expose it, they turned on him. One even tried to have him assassinated during a trip to South Africa. That was when he made a decision. He faked his own death, went underground, and returned to Umuaka, the last place anyone would think to look. He cut ties with everyone, including Mimi, whose love for him turned venomous once she realized she wasn't in the will. He changed his name, destroyed his SIM cards, and began living like a ghost. But when his lawyer told him he needed to marry to protect certain business assets from hostile takeover, he panicked. He needed someone off the radar. Someone real, someone like Amarachi. "I never expected to fall in love," he said, voice low. "But I did, and I ruined it. I know I don't deserve you, but I'm here because I have nothing left to hide." Amarachi stared at him, her tears falling freely now. For the first time since they married, she saw the man behind the mystery. 3 days later, the world changed again. News broke across Nigeria. Top tech mogul reappears, exposes $12 billion corporate fraud ring. Photos of Nana standing beside EFCC officials hit the headlines. He had handed over thousands of documents and agreed to testify in court. The internet went wild again, but this time with praise. Amarachi's image returned to the spotlight too. Queen Amarachi trended for hours. Influencers began calling her the loyal village wife who turned out to be a queen. Blogs asked for interviews. Fashion pages recreated her wedding look, the famous yellow Ankara gown and rubber slippers. Nana became a national hero overnight. But in the background, his enemies were still watching. And Amarachi knew that peace was a long road ahead. Still, something had changed. This time she wasn't running. She was ready to stand beside her husband, not as a pawn in a test, but as a woman in her own power. The invitation was formal and heavily guarded, a press conference in Lagos, hosted by ND Holdings, Nana's company, to officially confirm his identity and clear the air. Amarachi didn't want to go. She hated cameras, and after the viral humiliation, she didn't trust public opinion. But Nana insisted. "They need to see you, not just for me, for us." The venue was packed. Journalists, bloggers, investors, all hungry for a headline. Amarachi sat quietly in the front row, wearing a custom green gown made by a young village tailor she insisted on supporting. And Nana walked to the podium, paused, and began, "My name is Nana Dominic Aze. 2 years ago, I vanished. Today I return not as a victim, but as a survivor." Gasps filled the room. He told the truth about the betrayal, the assassination attempt, the decision to disappear, and most importantly, Amarachi. He pointed to her. "She didn't choose me for my name or my net worth. She chose me in spite of it. She is not just my wife. She is my miracle." The crowd erupted. For the first time, Amarachi felt proud, not because she was married to a billionaire, but because she had survived the storm and was finally being seen for who she really was. But the peace didn't last. 3 days after the press conference, a scandal broke online. Screenshots of fake bank statements, alleged love messages from Nana to multiple women, a deep fake video showing him kissing someone who wasn't Amarachi. At the center of it all, Mimi. She had hired hackers, paid off gossip blogs, fabricated a story that painted Nana as a manipulator who staged his own redemption for sympathy. The internet was divided. "He's lying! It's all PR! Amarachi is just a paid actress." Amarachi watched it all unfold in disbelief. Mimi even went live on Instagram, crying into the camera. "I gave him everything. He used me and replaced me with a village girl who didn't even own sandals." The comments section roasted her, but the damage was done. Nana's business partners began pulling out. International media outlets paused interviews. Stocks dropped. And once again, Amarachi found herself caught in a war that wasn't hers, but one she was now forced to finish. Enough was enough. Amarachi called a meeting with Nana's media team. "I want to speak. No more silence, no more hiding." They were hesitant she wasn't a public speaker, they said. But she didn't care. She went live on YouTube, sitting in a modest living room with no makeup, no stylist, just truth. She told her story of her father's sickness, her marriage, the betrayal, the escape, the fear, the loyalty, the love, the pain, and the survival. "I didn't marry a billionaire," she said. "I married a man who was broken, just like me. We didn't find each other in comfort. We found each other in ashes." The video went viral. 20 million views in 48 hours. Celebrities reposted it. Women called her the voice of village girls everywhere. Mimi was arrested the following week for blackmail, fraud, and defamation. Her entire social media was wiped out. And Amarachi? She trended again. This time, not as a meme, but as a movement. Amarachi's return to her village was something out of a Nollywood movie. A helicopter landed on the field beside the church where she once said, "I do," in an old Ankara dress. Children screamed. Elders danced. Mama Grace sobbed uncontrollably. Amarachi stepped out, wearing a flowing lace dress made by local designers, waving with humility and power. The same villagers who once called her cursed now praised her name with songs. She didn't come empty-handed. A construction company followed behind her. Her first major project, Grace Memorial Health Center, named after her mother, the first modern clinic in Umuaka. She also commissioned 10 boreholes, gave scholarships to 50 girls, and handed out empowerment grants to widows. When asked why, she said, "Because I was once that girl carrying firewood, praying for a miracle. Now I am that miracle for others." Umuaka would never be the same again. The night after the celebration, Amarachi opened her Instagram for the first time in days. Her notifications were wild celebrities following her, modeling agencies offering deals, producers requesting movie rights. But one message caught her eye. It was from Chisholm, her childhood crush, the boy who once told her, "You know, fine reach for my level." His message read, "Amarachi, long time. I see you've done well for yourself. Maybe we can catch up sometime. I'm still single." She stared at it for a moment. Then she uploaded a picture herself on a yacht, sipping champagne with Nana's hand around her waist. Caption: "To all the ones who said I wasn't enough, God of Nana did it." The internet went mad. #God of Nana became the newest trend. And for the first time in a long time, Amarachi laughed from her soul. Perfect. The email came from a Lagos-based film production company. "We want to turn your story into a feature-length film." At first, Amarachi laughed. It sounded ridiculous. But as more producers began calling from Netflix Africa to a streaming platform in the UK, she realized this was bigger than her pain. Her life had become a symbol of survival, of class wars, of choosing love over greed. Still, she had one condition. "I won't let some bleach-skinned actress with a fake accent play me," she told them. "If I agree to this, village girls must be cast. Real ones. Girls who wear slippers. Girls who fetch water." They agreed. Production began. The film was titled Firewood to Fortune and quickly became one of the most anticipated Nigerian releases of the year. Amarachi helped write the script. The story followed a young girl with dreams too big for her hut and a man who tested her soul to find his own peace. Amarachi didn't do it for fame. She did it so no girl would ever feel invisible again. As her story grew, Amarachi faced criticism from elites and influencers. "She's just lucky," they said. "What did she even do? If she wasn't pretty, no billionaire would look at her." But Amarachi didn't respond. She poured her energy into her foundation. She built 3 learning centers in rural communities and partnered with hospitals to fund maternal care for underprivileged women. She was invited to speak at a United Nations event in Nairobi, where she told her story in front of diplomats and world leaders. "They said I was cursed because I was poor, but now they watch my videos for inspiration." She wore the same style of Ankara she once got mocked for, now sewn into a regal gown with gold lining. Her walk wasn't just confident, it was defiant. Amarachi had become more than a headline. She was a movement. Mimi, once a socialite with hundreds of thousands of followers, was now disgraced and forgotten. After her arrest, she attempted a rebrand selling detox teas on Instagram, claiming she had healed and forgiven. But the internet wasn't buying it. Screenshots resurfaced of her threats to Amarachi. Old clips of her mocking villagers went viral. Brands dropped her. Her apartment in Lekki was repossessed. And when she tried to launch a YouTube channel, the comments section drowned her in reminders. "You almost destroyed a queen. God of Nana doesn't forget." Mimi went silent. One last desperate move. She sent Amarachi an apology letter, begging for mercy and offering to tell her side of the story for redemption. Amarachi read it, folded it neatly, and threw it in the fireplace. Some things don't deserve closure, only distance. It had been 2 years since Amarachi first said "I do" in that dusty church, wearing a faded wrapper and slippers. Now she stood in a white lace gown custom-made by a local fashion school she sponsored. The venue was the beachside resort Nana had built in her name. Their second wedding wasn't about proving anything. It was about celebrating everything. Friends from the village flew in. Politicians, celebrities, and activists filled the seats. Mama Grace danced like her legs were 20 years younger. The priest smiled as he looked at the couple. "You may now renew your vows." Nana turned to her, eyes filled with tears. "I found the whole world when I found you," Amarachi replied, voice trembling. "And I found myself when I chose to stay." They kissed under the sunset as fireworks exploded in the sky. Not for the wealth, not for the fame, but for surviving it all. Together. Back at their home in Ikoyi, Amarachi sat on the rooftop balcony. The night was quiet. Lagos lights twinkled like a million tiny secrets. She wore no makeup. Her phone buzzed with messages from CEOs and foreign dignitaries. But tonight she wasn't Amarachi the icon. She was the girl who once whispered prayers at the stream, not knowing heaven had heard her. Nana walked over with a blanket. He wrapped it around her shoulders and sat beside her. They didn't speak for a while. Then she whispered, "I'm scared sometimes, that I'll wake up and this will all disappear." He held her hand. "It won't. You earned this." She smiled. "No, we earned this." They clinked their glasses. Below them, the city moved. Above them, the stars watched in silence. And beside her sat the man who once had nothing and gave her everything. Amarachi had become the dream, and she would never apologize for it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more timeless tales. See you next time.